General Hospital spoilers reveal that acting District Attorney Turner had no idea that every subtle adjustment she made to the case against Sonny Corinthos was quietly opening the door to one of the greatest disasters Port Charles had seen in years. Her determination to expose the truth behind the shooting of Drew Kane was not simply a professional pursuit, it was becoming an obsession. The kind that blinds even the sharpest legal minds to the danger of cornering a man who had already crossed the line between survival and destruction more times than anyone could count. Turner believed she was tightening a legal noose. In reality, she was igniting the buried fragments of Sonny's darkest instincts that had slept, but never died. Ever since the day Drew was shot, a residue of guilt and paranoia had clung to Sonny like a second skin. Turner's renewed push to uncover the shooter did more than reopen a cold file. It reopened the fractures in Sonny's mind where fear and rage lived side by side. He had spent months convincing himself that this was a threat he could contain, a wound he could manage. But Turner's precision, her relentlessness, her insistence on examining every angle, every motive, every movement around the time of the shooting began to unravel the thin stability he had crafted. Sonny was a man who thrived on control, and Turner was systematically stripping that control from him with every investigative step she took. What Turner failed to grasp, what she could not possibly predict, was that Sonny's past was not just a collection of crimes buried in court files. It was a living thing breathing behind his ribs, waiting for the moment someone pushed him too far. And Turner, without knowing it, was pushing exactly where it hurt most. She believed her legal authority protected her, that her calculated professionalism created distance. But distance meant nothing to a man who once put a bullet into Agent John Jagger Cates at point-blank range when he felt his family had been threatened. Sonny had not flinched then. He had not hesitated. And Port Charles had learned the hard way that when Sonny believed someone was crossing a line, he did not merely push back. He erased obstacles entirely. The more Turner investigated, the more she disrupted the balance Sonny fought to maintain. She asked questions he thought were buried. She pursued evidence he hoped had dissolved with time. She pressed witnesses who feared him, and that alone stirred the air with a sense of approaching catastrophe. Sonny had tried to be patient. He had tried to maintain the version of himself that the community admired, the philanthropist, the protector, the steady force standing between his city and chaos. But every time Turner reopened another layer of the Drew case, that carefully shaped version of him cracked a little more. What frightened Sonny was not simply the case. It was the possibility that Turner might find the truth. Sonny feared most the truth that the shooter could be someone tied to him, or worse, a consequence of his own violent world. Every step Turner took threatened to expose the brutality he had spent years pretending he had outgrown. She did not see that her pursuit of justice was clawing at the threads holding Sonny's sanity together. She believed she was close to a breakthrough. Sonny believed she was marching herself directly into the same deadly territory that had once swallowed Jagger whole. Turner's confidence became the spark that lit Sonny's dread. She showed no fear, no hesitation, no instinct for self-preservation. She treated this case as if it were a puzzle to solve, a victory to claim, rather than a live wire running straight into the heart of a man capable of lethal action when pushed beyond his limit. Each time she appeared in a hallway, each time she requested files, each time she pressed a new line of questioning, Sonny's mind went darker. He started seeing threats where none existed, imagining betrayals in words Turner didn't even mean as accusations. The closer Turner moved toward her truth, the more Sonny drifted back toward the version of himself he knew too well, the man who removed problems. Not with strategy, but with finality. People whispered that Turner was brave. Sonny feared she was suicidal and didn't even know it. There was something tragic in her determination, something heroic but devastatingly naive. She believed justice would shield her. But Sonny had killed an FBI agent for less than what she was attempting now. If Turner uncovered something that threatened Sonny's world, she would become more than a prosecutor. She would become a target. And the most terrifying part was that Sonny knew it. He felt the shift inside himself, the slow resurgence of the ruthless protector who did not negotiate with threats. He hated the part of him that tightened like a fist, hated that Turner's work awakened impulses he had tried to bury. But he could not ignore the feeling spiraling inside him. The feeling that Turner was playing with a weapon she didn't understand. Her investigation wasn't just reopening a case. It was pressing her hand against the trigger of a man who had killed before and could kill again. The disaster forming around Turner was not immediate. It was slow, silent, inevitable, like a storm building offshore. By chasing Drew's shooter, she had stepped into Sonny's shadow without understanding the cost. And if she continued to push, continued to provoke, continued to threaten the fragile barrier Sonny had constructed between his better instincts and his deadly ones, she could become the next chapter in his long history of irreversible decisions. A chapter written not in legal briefs but in blood. Turner thought she was hunting the truth. She didn't realize the truth might already be hunting her. Sonny Corinthos had faced pressure before. Political pressure, legal pressure. Pressure from rival families and federal agencies that wanted nothing more than to see him fall, but nothing compared. to the crushing weight closing around him now. The combined force of Sidwell's manipulation and Cullum's invisible but suffocating influence had begun to distort Sonny's judgment in ways even he could not recognize. Their calculated efforts to corner him to test the limits of his patience had ignited a darkness he thought he had buried years ago. And as their shadow grew heavier, Turner's relentless pursuit of control only sharpened the fracture lines already spreading through Sonny's mind. Turner believed she was guiding the narrative, tightening her grip on an investigation she thought she understood. But every legal maneuver she made, every demand she pushed forward, poured gasoline onto a fire that had been simmering beneath Sonny's ribs. She could not see how dangerously close she was to the edge. She saw a corrupt man under pressure. She did not see a pressure cooker seconds from exploding. She saw an opportunity for justice. She did not see the storm his paranoia was becoming. Her need for control was not stabilizing the situation, it was destabilizing, Sonny unhinging him piece by piece. Sonny's obsession with her actions grew into something suffocating, something primal. The more Turner pressed him, the more he felt the walls closing in, as if every breath she took was draining the space he needed to think clearly. Sidwell and Cullum, working from the shadows, had slowly poisoned the air around Sonny, convincing him that threats were everywhere and loyalty nowhere. They distorted his reality so thoroughly that Turner's investigation no longer looked like a legal threat, it looked like a personal attack, a betrayal, a trap that he needed to eliminate before it could snap shut around his family. Dante saw the shift before anyone else. He recognized the tightening jaw, the low breathing, the silence between words, signs of a darkness he had tried for years to help his father rise above. Dante had always been Sonny's anchor to morality, the reminder of who he could be instead of who he used to be. But now for the first time he felt that anchor slipping. The moral ground beneath Sonny was crumbling so fast that Dante could barely keep up, much less stop him. Every attempt to reason with Sonny only made him more defensive, more unpredictable, more convinced that the world was plotting against him. Turner became the focal point of Sonny's spiraling paranoia. She was everywhere in his mind, at every door, in every conversation, in every scenario he imagined. She wasn't just a danger, she was the danger. Sidwell's subtle pushing, Cullum's whispered threats, and Turner's insistence on control fused into one overwhelming belief that she needed to be stopped before she destroyed everything he had left. And once that idea took root in Sonny's mind, it grew like a stain he couldn't wash off. Dante knew what was coming. He felt it in the tension that radiated off Sonny in waves in the late-night pacing, in the way Sonny's voice dropped into a whisper even when talking about mundane matters. It was the same energy that had filled the air before Sonny shot Jagger, the same haunted expression he had worn years ago before pulling the trigger on Dante himself without realizing he was pointing a gun at his own son. The signs were unmistakable, the calm before an irreversible storm. If Dante didn't stop him soon, Sonny would cross a line he could never return from. But Turner had no idea she was walking into the center of Sonny's unraveling. She moved with the confidence of a woman protected by law, unaware that the law meant nothing to a man who believed he had already been judged. She had no reason to fear Sonny. She saw him only through the lens of the justice system, not through the fractured lens of a man losing his sense of reality. With every step she took closer to the truth, she unknowingly walked closer to her death. Sonny began planning without realizing he was planning. Dark thoughts formed between moments of clarity, creating a distorted logic he believed was necessary to survive. Turner was tightening a noose around him, and Sonny convinced himself the only way to breathe was to remove the rope entirely. There was no rage in this decision, only a cold, detached resolve, born from fear and pressure, and a lifetime of violence resurfacing like old ghosts. If Turner died, the entire foundation of the PCPD would collapse under the weight of public scrutiny, political chaos, and internal distrust. It wouldn't simply be a tragedy. It would be a catastrophe, a seismic break in the fragile structure of Port Charles. Law enforcement. Her death would trigger investigations, suspensions, accusations, and retaliations. It would tear open old wounds between the police and the Corinthos family, creating a storm no one would be able to contain. And yet Sonny, drowning in pressure from Sidwell and Cullum, blinded by paranoia and haunted by past sins, could no longer see the consequences. He no longer feared the fallout. His world had narrowed down to a single point: survival. And in that mindset, Turner was no longer a prosecutor. She was the threat, the enemy, the problem he needed to eliminate to reclaim control. What Dante feared most was no longer a possibility, it was a prophecy unfolding in front of him. If he failed to pull Sonny back from the brink, Port Charles would soon be mourning not just Turner, but the man Sonny used to be. A man who was slipping away into darkness faster than anyone could stop. And when that darkness finally swallows him, there may be no saving him or the city he was once sworn to protect. Turner had always believed herself immune to the kind of emotional chaos that could compromise a career, a reputation, or a case. Yet the closer she moved towards Sonny Corinthos, the more she found herself unraveling in ways she could neither explain nor control. What began as professional intrigue had transformed into something far more volatile, an undeniable pull toward the very man she had sworn to bring down. Her growing feelings for Sonny were not gentle nor hesitant. They were fierce, consuming, overwhelming enough to distort the clear logic she once depended on. Each stolen glance, each unguarded moment between them intensified the storm inside her, blurring the line between duty and desire until she no longer knew which one was guiding her forward. The danger of it only made the connection stronger. Sonny, with all his contradictions, his darkness, his charm, his quiet vulnerability became an obsession. She tried desperately to hide from herself. She felt alive when he looked at her, felt seen in a way she had never allowed anyone to see her. And yet she knew the truth. Her feelings were dragging her into a world where affection had consequences, where trust could become a weapon, and where a single misstep could destroy everything she had built. But turning away from Sonny felt impossible. Her heart moved toward him with the recklessness of someone already too far gone. This emotional entanglement fed into the chaos already surrounding them. The more Turner fell for Sonny, the more her judgment wavered and the more dangerous the situation became. She could sense his darkness, feel the weight of his past lurking beneath the surface, but instead of pulling back, she leaned closer. The forbidden nature of their bond only fueled her desire, turning every interaction into a quiet collision of tension and temptation. She knew she was losing control, but part of her welcomed the fall. The obsession taking hold of her wasn't just romantic, it was psychological. Sonny represented everything she should fear, yet everything she couldn't resist. And as her emotions deepened, the world around them grew more unstable. Every decision she made carried the risk of disaster, but she no longer cared. The truth was undeniable. Turner was in love with a man who could destroy her, and the intensity of that love was becoming a dangerously seductive force, one that threatened to consume them both.